What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We are here breaking down week 18 of the NFL season for DraftKings and FanDuel. Saturday edition. We have a two-game slate here featuring some divisional opponents between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. Unfortunately enough for us, both these games are going to have something to be played for, because usually week 18 of the year we have a lot of teams that are resting starters, certain players sitting out, or a bunch of guys chasing contract incentive bonuses because they're getting close to a certain threshold at the end of the season, and teams will force feed those guys to reward them. But for these two games, like I said, they have something to be played for. With the Chiefs going for the number one seed versus the Raiders, which, yes, they should win that game easily. They are nearly double-digit favorites. But the Raiders almost set the 49ers last weekend, so really anything can happen, and I'm sure they would love to play spoiler versus their divisional opponent. And also, we have the Tennessee Titans and the Jaguars, who are playing for the division, so both games should be pretty good here, and I am looking forward to them. But anyway, if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. And what I like to do in these videos, I go position by position with the player pool that I have interest in as of right now, which keep in mind that could change by the time kickoff rolls around, because these are recorded couple days before the slate starts. I like to build a lineup as we progress through it, more so for a single entry tournament build. Then at the end, I'll run my optimizer with the current ownership and projections that I have currently set in place to see who is popping the most as of right now. And hey, if that all sounds fine and dandy to you, we can do one small thing in return. That's leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel if you are new, and feel free to leave a comment down below saying whatever you want to say. Say something nice, say something mean. I don't really care either way, but I would love to hear from you. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. I do have to mention, if you want access to the sheets, projections, optimizer, ownership projections, all that fun stuff, do cover the NBA in a similar fashion. We have NASCAR coming up very soon, which is my main thing, which got a lot of stuff for that. Links down below in the description or the pinned comment for that if you do want to check it out. Anyway, let's get into it. There is really only two quarterbacks I like. I know I usually only have the guys I'm interested in, but since the two-gamer, I'm just going to leave them on here. But I'll tell you right now, I am not playing Jared Studham. He played very well last week, so he deserved the name. And then we have Josh Dobbs there, $5,100. I am not playing either, so if I might 150 max this, I'm still deciding. I'm going to play some cash in 3 max, but if I do play 150 max, I am just playing those two quarterbacks and hoping the other two just aren't optimal, because if they are, well, it's going to be a bad day for me, but I just don't really see it happening, so I'm pretty much going to be all in on Mahomes and Lawrence, and I'll be very heavily invested on Patrick Mahomes here. He does have an incentive to where he needs like 400 some yards to hit a certain bonus. The guy's already rich as it is, so I'm not sure he really cares too much. But either way, he should crush the Raiders here. They're a terrible pass defense. They have a 30.5 implied team total, which is by far the highest on the slate. Next highest is Trevor Lawrence and the Jags at 23. So I definitely want to get a lot of Chiefs exposure here. And something to keep in mind, your lineups are going to look a lot different on a slate like this than it would for a main slate. I don't mind triple stacking with guys. I don't mind double tight end lineups. I don't mind using a Pacheco with a Patrick Mahomes, even though it doesn't correlate the best. It's just we kind of have to get weird on these kind of slates with the lack of options that we have. And the numbers on the year, there's a reason he's going to be the MVP. I mean, 315 passing yards per game, 2.5 passing touchdowns. You guys get the idea. Mahomes, pretty good at football, and he's facing the dead last 32nd DVOA Raiders pass defense. So yes, sign me up for all the Chiefs and their pass catching options, and really just everybody on the team. If you're wearing a red jersey on Saturday, I want you in my lineup. Then we have, well, I guess since they're going to be on the road in Vegas, I guess they might have white jerseys, but you guys get what I'm saying. Anyway, Trevor Lawrence, $6,100 facing off versus the Tennessee Titans. He crushed in this matchup. I forget how many weeks ago it was, but he played very well. And the Titans are a bit of a pass funnel defense. They're very, very good versus the run, first DVOA. But versus the pass, that's where they're going to struggle, which is why I think this sets up perfectly for Trevor Lawrence as a nice pivot off of Mahomes. Now, he's not a direct pivot. He's about $2,000 cheaper. He opens up a lot in your lineup. I just don't think he's got quite the upside Mahomes does on average, but I think a ceiling game could definitely be in play here for Lawrence. Plus, there's a lot on the line. He's been playing some very good football in recent weeks, and as you can see, the Titans are allowing nearly 300 passing yards per game, third most points per game to the quarterback position, and they're also 27th DVA versus the pass. The stacks are very cheap for Lawrence and the Jags, so I don't mind going there whatsoever. Like I said, these are really the only two quarterbacks I like, so I'm going to have some very heavy stacks on Jags and some very heavy stacks on the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's really tempting to go Lawrence. Like if you're building a single entry lineup, to go Lawrence over Mahomes, because he's going to save you a lot of money, and that could get you an extra stud running back or an extra stud wide receiver. But man, I just feel really comfortable with Patrick Mahomes. But these are definitely the two that I want the most exposure to. And honestly, I'm pretty much just crossing off the next two. And heading over to our lineup, it is kind of tempting to go with Trevor Lawrence for a single entry build just because, let's say Mahomes, he gets you 20, 25 points. Like, that's great. I'm not going to complain. But I feel like Lawrence has similar upside to that as well. And if he does that, I'm saving a couple $1,000s, and it might allow me to afford a guy like Derrick Henry over an Isaiah Pacheco or Devontae Adams over, maybe not quite like a Juju Smith-Schuster, but that's just something to think about given that scenario. But for this build specifically, we're going to go with Mahomes. He's my guy, and we'll move on to running backs. And once again, I do have the whole list here. I do not have interest in about half of these guys, so just something to keep in mind here. But we'll start top with Derrick Henry, $8,000. Facing off versus the Jaguars, this is a fine matchup. The thing is, though, on this slate, I'm prioritizing guys like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Etienne, Travis Kelce over a Derrick Henry. I'm going to run out of money soon enough here, so he might be the guy I kind of just leave off. Now, is that scary? Yes, because Henry can get you 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he has a pretty good track record versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. But they haven't been terrible versus the run. 12th DVOA this season, 22nd versus fantasy running backs isn't all that great. But they have been kind of giving it up in the passing game, which is not something Derrick Henry is really used too much in, considering he's getting less than 3 targets per game this year. Although it seems like there's a new quarterback every single week for the Tennessee Titans. We know he's going to get the volume, but with him being a 6.5-point dog on the road, only 16.5 implied team total, I think this is one of those spots where you can fade Derrick Henry and not feel too bad about it. It's not like he's a 5-point favorite at home facing the Houston Texans. That's a completely different scenario. And if you are using a jag stack, yes, he could be that run back option you use. But honestly, with his price tag, and I'm still trying to fit in a guy like Travis Kelce, I might just go elsewhere, save a little bit of cash with a guy like Josh Jacobs at $7,400. I know there was some concern last week with how they were going to use starters, and they had the new quarterback, but honestly, that guy might just be better than Derek Carr. He had over 300 passing yards and overall a pretty good game. And Josh Jacobs is going to get all the volume you can handle. They are 9.5-point dogs at home, which is pretty rough, but obviously have not been playing very good football. But he should get the volume. My only concern is, though, it's the last week of the year, so really, do they end up being a little bit careful with him? I'm not 100% sure. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but I'm assuming he's going to practice today, which I'm recording this right now. So obviously I do not know that yet. But if he can get a practice in sometime this week and he's good to go, I'm going to like Josh Jacobs at $7,400 just based off the volume and usage that he should have. And he also had 5 targets in that game. Did get banged up a little bit, but ended up coming back in the game, which I think is a pretty good sign. Travis Etienne, $6,700. If you were playing cash games, I think he's going to be the highest on running back, so I'm probably going to just try my best to jam in Travis Etienne. Now, I will say the matchup's bad. Like I said, the Titans, they're a bit of a pass funnel defense. They're really good versus the run, 2nd DVOA, and allowing the 7 fewest points per game to the running back position. Only 65 rushing yards, less than half a rushing touchdown. Just been absolutely brutal. But we don't have many options to go with, and we know he gets pretty much all the usage in this backfield. And if they would just use him more in the passing game, I think that would just do wonders. But I'm still going to use him here, $6,700. Matchup be darned. Hopefully he can just find the end zone and feel pretty good about it, or a couple of catches. Jerick McKinnon, the touchdown scoring machine. I tell this to myself every week in my head. I mean, I've not been anti-Jerick McKinnon. I have played him here and there. But I keep telling myself at some point he's going to stop scoring 2 touchdowns every single week, but he just keeps doing it, or a touchdown every single week. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again versus the Raiders here. It's just, obviously at some point the touchdowns are not going to continue. But this is a great matchup for both him and Isaiah Pacheco. And honestly, though, I kind of prefer the savings I get with Pacheco, especially with them being 9-point favorites. I'm not really sure how much they'll have to use Jerick McKinnon in the passing game, but the usage has been fantastic for him. But again, touchdowns are a bit of a fluky stat, and he is not getting to the end zone. He's not getting into those 20, 30-point weeks, but he's still viable for sure, and will have some exposure, especially if you're playing 150 max. You'll definitely want a decent chunk of Jerick McKinnon. But Pacheco, if you're someone that's playing cash games, I think he's a pretty fine option here at $5,600. The guy's getting a lot of work. He should get you 15-plus touches on a 30.5 implied team total team as a 9.5-point favorite. Best offense in the NFL. And I believe he did find the end zone last week, which is nice to see. And he's getting you close to 5 yards per carry on the season. And obviously, the Raiders this year have not been good whatsoever. And they gave up a ton of points to CMC last week, which I would say McKinnon's probably closer to CMC than Pacheco is as far as being, his utilization in the passing game. But both these guys should be in for a pretty fine game. And I wouldn't mind having exposure to both, but I do like Pacheco a lot at his price point. And then after that, we have Haskins, Hasty, and Abdullah. I don't have any interest in all three of those guys. They're just here because they're the last few that I had projections for, but not really on my radar at all. And moving back over to our lineup, I know it doesn't make a ton of sense to use Pacheco with Patrick Mahomes. I'd prefer Jerick McKinnon just because he's used much more in the passing game. As you can see, just not really much of a ball carrier, but 6 targets, 3, 8, 9. It's just he scores a touchdown basically every single week. But with this being a small slate, we can kind of break our normal rules. So I don't mind going with Isaiah Pacheco there. And then I'm going to go with Travis Etienne because he's going to get similar usage to guys like Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs, and the matchup's absolutely awful. But we can save about $1,000 and close to $2,000 there, which I'm going to kind of need that with Mahomes and Kelsey, who we're going to play later on. So I'll take it, $6,700, and move on to some pass catchers. And on a small slate like this, we just have to make sure we're correlating our lineup. So if I had Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to have to grab a couple of pass catchers from his team. So Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney, MVS, Justin Watson, even if you want to get nasty. He plays snaps, just doesn't really do too much. And then find my run back options. So since I have Chiefs, a guy like Devontae Adams sticks out. He's by far the best wide receiver on the slate. He is priced up about $3,000 from the next guy, Christian Kirk. Or you can look at some cheaper options like Hunter Renfrow, but I think you guys get the idea. I do want to mention a couple of these guys do have some incentives to earn some extra cash. So I believe Christian Kirk, it's either $250K or $500K if he gets about 90-ish receiving yards. I think he needs 1,100 on the season. I think he's like 1,009 or something, 1,010, something like that. But he needs about 90 yards. So $6,200, it's a good matchup versus Tennessee. And then Zay Jones also, I think, needs around 80-ish yards, 80, 90 yards for an extra $250 or $500K. I was getting the two confused, but if they can hit those milestones, which I think they can, I mean, that's some extra money there. Obviously, I know the Jags' focus is on winning this game, but if they can get that in the process, I'm sure they would be quite pleased with that to reward those players. But just looking at the matchups here, I like the Jags wide receivers quite a bit, especially if you are going with the Lawrence stack. I mean, the Titans are allowing the most points per game in the wide receiver position, 190 receiving yards per game specifically. So guys like Christian Kirk, like I just mentioned, Zay Jones, all fine options. But if you want to get cheaper, I don't think Marvin Jones is a bad look at $3,600 if you're trying to save some money. Obviously, we know he's got some big play upside. He's not going to be too much of a consistent target for Trevor Lawrence, but he is averaging 5 per game on the season, which is not bad for a guy that's $3,600. Because if you're looking at everybody else that's this cheap, like Westbrook-Ikini, we're seeing under 3 targets per game. Justin Watson under 2, Jamal Agnew at about 2.5. So I think Marvin Jones is actually a very fine pump play. Obviously, if you're going with the Chiefs, we already mentioned those guys, then Devontae Adams is kind of your clear run back. And if you are stacking the Jags and you are not using Derrick Henry as a run back option, you could also look at Chig at tight end, but you have Treylon Burks, Robert Woods as the 2 standouts there. I'm not going to go through every single wide receiver here because honestly, besides Devontae Adams and maybe a couple of these guys, it's all kind of gross. So just make sure it's correlated with your quarterback and then find the specific run back options that you like. And moving back over to our lineups, let's get Patrick Mahomes a couple of pass catchers here. So we're going to plug in Juju. He's also has some incentives, but his is basically an auto. I think he only needs I think it's like less than 10 yards for Juju Smith-Schuster to get his, so he's going to be fine. $5,400, so I like that price point. I know he didn't do too much versus Denver last week, but obviously their defense is pretty solid, even though the team's not that great. But before that, in Week 16 wasn't great either. Did have a stretch in Week 15 and Week 14 where he had 21 targets. So I do like him. $5,400. He's cheap, and he paired with Patrick Mahomes. And then I almost want to wait for the last 2 spots because I know I'm plugging in Travis Kelce. So I think we will do just that. And wide receiver is really going to be a dime a dozen here. It's just going to be a matter of who's fitting and who's not. So let's move on to the tight end position, which is basically just Travis Kelce and Evan Ingram, and everybody else kind of fills in, but we'll still talk about them. And like I said, there's really only 2 guys I want to play. It's Kelce and Ingram. I don't think I had to explain these things. Kelce, very good at football. If you're playing Patrick Mahomes, he is your main target every single week. The wide receivers can kind of be a revolving door of I don't know who it's going to be. Let's just hope I'm getting the right guy. But we know Travis Kelce is going to get the work every single week, and he crushes the Raiders every single time. Had 4 touchdowns versus them earlier in the year. Now he didn't do too much in the yards department, but every single time he faces the Raiders, it seems like he goes off. Evan Ingram, he's been getting a lot of work lately in targets, and he's looked very good, and he gets a good spot versus Tennessee, that pass funnel defense. If you're not playing those 2 guys, Waller as a run back option versus the Chiefs, that's fine. I don't love it, but he returned recently, and he's playable. Chig, maybe the cheap option run back with the Jaguars. And I'm not playing Hooper, Gray, or Foster Moreau, but really it's just a kind of a 2-man show here for me. And then as far as defenses are concerned, it's pretty much the Jags and Chiefs. I don't really see a scenario where I want to play the Raiders. with their 30-some point implied team total against them. Don't really want to play the Titans either. So for me, 2 defenses, and if the other ones happen to get a defensive touchdown, it is what it is. I'll take the L. I just don't see it happening. And to finish this lineup off, like I said, I think we're just going to have to play Travis Kelce here. I would like another pass catcher with Patrick Mahomes. You could look at Tony. You could look at MVS. I feel a little bit better with MVS, but Tony does have some nice tournament upside, which I do like. But we're gonna roll with MVS there. But those guys are kind of interchangeable for the most part. Let's plug in a cheaper defense. We will go with the Jags one here because we have Travis Etienne. So I think that correlates a little bit better. Because since I have the Chiefs full on onslaught stack here, I kind of hope that the Raiders at least score a little bit to make this somewhat close, possibly. Not really expecting that. And with that being said, we have just under $4,400 left. So as much as I'd like to get a guy like Christian Kirk in, that's just not going to work unless I went punt tight end, which you could do. But I don't feel great about it. If we went with Zay Jones, that leaves us $3,700, and that would actually leave us with the other Jones on that team, Marvin Jones, at $3,600, which I don't think looks too bad, to be honest. Didn't really plan to have a Jags stack there, but we do have ETN, Zay Jones, and Marvin Jones with the Jags defense. So I guess either way, I'm kind of stuck because I'd want the Titans to score in that scenario, but might not be. I'm not going to drop to another defense here to use anyway. So don't just copy and paste this. There's many ways you can go. I'm just trying to merely see what fits as we talk through it. And this is by no means a lineup that I'm guaranteed to use on Saturday. And like I said at the beginning, just wanted to run the optimizer to see who is popping, which I had it going while we were talking, which that rhymes, so we don't have to wait on it. So let me pull up the players tab here. And yeah, lots of ETN, Kelce, Juju, which all 3 guys we had in the lineup, which I just have a hard time not playing them. Lots of Zay Jones. More Derrick Henry than I thought, which is kind of surprising. I'm trying to figure out where this money is coming from, but maybe we'll see a cheap play pop up that I wasn't expecting. Lots of Evan Ingram, Traylon Burks. Maybe that's one of the reasons why he's getting jammed in, because I know Burks is really cheap at $4,200. Mahomes is the most popular quarterback. Trevor Lawrence actually below Jared Studham there, which is kind of surprising. So I did say I'm probably going to cross off the last 2 quarterbacks, but that is kind of intriguing. Maybe I'll add a sprinkle of Stidham, whatever it is there, since he's popping a little bit more. But I do like Trevor Lawrence more than him, so that's something where I don't completely agree on the projections. But yeah, I'm not overly too surprised here. I would probably have more Marvin Jones than Traylon Burks, but that's kind of personal preference there. And if you move over to the teams, Kansas City, Jacksonville is just major domination there, which I think makes sense. Not too much in the Raiders and Tennessee. With that being said, guys, that's all I got for you for this video. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. We wish you all the best of luck, and I will see you on Sunday for the main slate video.